My name is Marcus, and I'm 42 years old. It's been 3 years since my wife Miriam passed away, and even now, I can still smell her perfume lingering in the corners of our home when the evening light hits just right. She left behind more than memories, she left behind a void that neither time nor reason could fill. Alina was only 13 when we lost her, and she never really recovered. I tried to be strong for both of us, but grief has a way of creating distance, even between those who love each other most. I buried myself in work. Alina buried herself in silence. For a long time, we lived in the same house but in two different worlds. She'd retreat to her room after dinner, earbuds in, door locked. I'd pretend not to notice. Every picture of Miriam was tucked away in drawers. I thought it was the right thing, out of sight, out of pain. I never wanted Alina to see me breaking, so I learned to hide the cracks behind polite smiles and small talk. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows crawled across the living room, Alina came to me with that quiet, almost rehearsed tone that teens use when they're nervous but determined. "Dad," she said softly, "can I have Mom's jewelry box?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I turned to look at her. She had Miriam's same hazel eyes, the same stubborn tilt of the chin. For a second, I almost said yes. But then the memories came flooding back. The day I sealed that jewelry box after the funeral, the weight of that wooden lid closing on a piece of my heart. "Why do you want it?" I asked. "It's been years," she said, almost whispering. "Mom would want me to have it." I shook my head. "That jewelry is special, Alina. I'm not ready to part with it yet." Her lips tightened, and she turned away. "You're not ready? Or you just don't trust me?" Before I could answer, she stormed off to her room, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frames on the wall. I sat there for a long time, staring into the quiet that followed. That jewelry box wasn't just a collection of ornaments. It was Miriam's soul preserved in silver and gold, the engagement ring she never took off, the emerald pendant I gave her on our 5th anniversary, the antique brooch she wore on our wedding day. Each piece carried its own story, its own heartbeat. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, something gnawed at me. I went to my study, unlocked the drawer where I kept the jewelry box, and checked inside. Everything was where it should be, the soft velvet, the glint of metal under lamplight. I closed it and tried to forget. But over the next few days, things started to feel off. Drawers left slightly open when I knew I'd closed them. The faint scent of Miriam's perfume in the hallway. The sound of Alina's door creaking open in the middle of the night. Then one morning, as I was leaving for work, I noticed something small missing from the living room shelf, a picture of Miriam wearing that pearl necklace. I brushed it off at first. Maybe Alina had taken it. But when I came home that evening, the air in the house felt heavy, dense, like the walls were holding their breath. I decided to check on the jewelry box again. The drawer was still locked. But when I pulled it open, my heart dropped. The jewelry box was gone. In its place lay a plain white envelope. My name was written on it in neat, looping handwriting. Miriam's handwriting. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My fingers trembled as I tore the envelope open. Inside, there was nothing, just an empty fold of paper. No message, no explanation. I called out for Alina, my voice cracking with panic. She appeared at the top of the stairs, eyes wide with innocence or maybe fear. "Where's the box?" I demanded. "What box?" she said too quickly. I could see the lie flicker across her face. I rushed up the stairs, past her protests, into her room. Everything looked normal until I noticed the edge of a velvet pouch peeking from under her pillow. I pulled it out. Inside was a single pearl earring, one from the pair Miriam used to wear almost every day. Alina's face went pale. "It's just one," she whispered. "I just wanted something to remember her by." "You could have asked," I said sharply. "You said no," she shot back, tears welling in her eyes. "You said you weren't ready, but what about me, Dad? I lost her too." Her words cut deep, but before I could reply, she ran from the room, slamming the door again. I sat on her bed, the pearl glinting in my hand, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake by locking so much of Miriam away. That night, as I tried to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to move when I wasn't looking. I told myself it was exhaustion, grief, imagination. But when I woke the next morning, I went to my study, opened the drawer still locked, and found the jewelry box missing again. This time, there was no envelope, no note, just an empty space where Miriam's memory used to rest. The next morning, Marcus discovers the jewelry box is gone from his locked drawer. My hands trembled when I opened the drawer. Miriam's jewelry box was missing, replaced with an empty envelope. For a long moment, I just stared at the space where it used to be, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. I'd locked it. I always locked it. My mind scrambled for rational explanations, a forgotten key. Maybe Alina found a spare, but deep down, I already knew. I picked up the envelope, feeling a chill crawl up my arms. My name was written on it again. Same looping cursive, same ink strokes Miriam used when she used to leave me notes on the fridge. For a second, my vision blurred, and I could almost hear her voice whispering, "Don't be angry, love. It's only a memory." Again, empty, but heavy somehow, as if it held more meaning than words ever could. I called for Alina, my voice sharper than I intended. She came down, still in her pajamas, her eyes puffy from sleep. "Did you take it?" I asked, holding the envelope up like evidence. She looked at me for a second too long. "Take what?" "The jewelry box." Her lips pressed together. "No, Dad. You think I'd steal from you now? I don't think I know it's gone." I snapped. "And I know you wanted it." Something in her expression shifted, guilt or defiance. I couldn't tell. She shrugged. "Then maybe Mom took it back." That answer froze me where I stood. "Don't say that," I said quietly. "Why not?" She shot back. "You act like she's really gone, but she's not, Dad. You just don't listen." Before I could respond, she turned and ran upstairs. The sound of her door locking echoed through the house. I stood in the hallway, surrounded by silence, realizing I didn't even know how to talk to my own daughter anymore. After a few minutes, I followed her. I wasn't angry, just desperate. I knocked gently, then opened the door when she didn't answer. The room smelled faintly of her strawberry shampoo and something else, something floral and old, like the scent of Miriam's favorite perfume. Everything looked normal at first glance. The same posters on the wall, the same messy pile of clothes in the corner. But the air felt heavy, charged. That's when I noticed a lump under her pillow. I reached for it and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was one single pearl earring. I swallowed hard. "Alina," I called softly. She was standing behind me now, her eyes glistening. "I just wanted something of hers," she said in a trembling voice. "Something real." "Why didn't you ask me?" I whispered. "You said no. You always say no, but Mom wouldn't." I sighed, lowering the pouch. "Alina, that jewelry isn't just jewelry. I hesitated. "It's all I have left of her." Her expression softened, but there was something else in her eyes, something that looked like confusion. "You don't understand," she murmured. "Mom wants me to have it." "Alina," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "She's gone." She shook her head. "No, she's not." Her words hung between us like fog. I felt something cold curl around my chest. That night, after she went to bed, I sat at my desk and tried to think. Miriam's jewelry wasn't just sentimental, it was old. Some of the pieces dated back to her grandmother. Miriam once told me the box had been passed down for generations, each woman adding something new to it. She said it held the weight of memory. I thought she was being poetic back then. But as I stared at the empty drawer, her voice came back to me. "Promise me you'll protect this, Marcus. It's more than it seems." I had promised. I had failed. I searched the entire house that night, under couches, in drawers, even in the attic. Nothing. The jewelry box was gone. By midnight, I sat in the living room with the lights off, just listening. The house creaked softly, like it was breathing. Then, faintly, I heard something, Alina's voice. She was talking in her sleep, whispering words I couldn't make out. I got up and moved to her doorway. She was turned toward the wall, her hand stretched out as if reaching for someone. "Mom?" she murmured. "I promise I'll take care of it." A chill ran through me. I stepped closer, and for just a moment, I swore I heard another voice whisper back so soft, so familiar it could only have been Miriam. The next morning, I decided to confront her properly. She was quiet at breakfast, staring into her cereal like it held the answers to everything. "Alina," I began carefully, "if your mother could see us now, she'd want us to stop fighting." I looked up, her expression unreadable. "She does see us." I froze. "She talks to me," she continued calmly. "In dreams. She said the jewelry belongs to me now." My stomach twisted. "Alina, stop. That's not," she said. "You wouldn't understand." The defiance in her tone felt older than her years. I reached across the table, but she pulled away. Her eyes filled with tears. "You don't even know what she wanted me to have," she said, her voice trembling. "You never did." She stood abruptly, knocking over her chair, and stormed upstairs. I didn't stop her this time. After she was gone, I noticed something odd: the smell of lilies. Miriam's favorite flower. The scent was so strong it made my throat tighten. I turned toward the stairs, and that's when I saw it, the jewelry box, sitting neatly on the hallway table, closed, untouched, as if it had never gone missing at all. I reached out, heart pounding, and opened it slowly. It was empty. Every piece of jewelry was gone. For a moment, I couldn't move. My reflection stared back at me from the polished interior. Then, faintly, I heard something upstairs, a whisper, soft but clear. Someone said Miriam's name. I froze, every nerve in my body on edge. That night, Marcus hears someone whispering Miriam's name in Alina's room. I stood outside Alina's room. Frozen, the whisper sounded like Miriam's voice. It wasn't a trick of my mind. I knew that sound too well. That low, gentle tone she used when she was trying to soothe our daughter after nightmares. Only now, the voice wasn't comforting. It was wrong, distorted somehow, like it came from a place it shouldn't. The sound faded as I reached for the doorknob. My hand shook as I pushed the door open. Alina was sitting cross-legged on her bed, the room dimly lit by her bedside lamp. Her eyes were half closed, her lips moving silently. Right in front of her sat Miriam's jewelry box. It was back again. Whole, untouched. The wood gleamed faintly, catching the amber light in a way that made it seem alive. For a moment, I thought she was sleep-talking. But then she looked up at me, calm and aware, like she had been expecting me. "Where did you get that?" I demanded, stepping closer. She smiled faintly. "I didn't take it, Dad. Mom gave it to me." My heart skipped. "Don't say that, Alina. Where did you find it?" "She told me it would be here when I needed it." The way she said it sent a cold ripple down my spine. "Who told you that?" "Mom," she said simply, her fingers tracing the carvings on the box lid. "She told me in my dream. She said you wouldn't understand. Alina, enough." My voice came out louder than I meant. "This isn't a game. You can't keep pretending she's still here." She didn't flinch. Instead, she opened the jewelry box slowly. I expected to see empty velvet again. But it wasn't empty. Inside were the missing pieces: Miriam's necklace, the wedding ring, the brooch, even the pearl earrings. They looked brighter than ever, gleaming like freshly polished gold. But the strange part? There were new pieces, too. A pendant I'd never seen. A bracelet shaped like intertwined vines. "Miriam never owned these," I whispered, reaching out to touch one. The moment my fingers brushed the surface, the air shifted. A chill swept through the room, and every light flickered at once. Alina gasped. "She doesn't want you to touch them," she said, clutching the box close to her chest. I pulled my hand back, shaken. "Alina, where did those come from?" She looked straight into my eyes. "From her. She said they were hers before she met you. They belong to us." I stared at her, not knowing what to say. She wasn't lying, at least, not in the way a child lies. Her voice was calm, convinced. That terrified me even more. "Alina," I said quietly, "your mother is gone. What you're hearing, it's grief. It's your mind trying to hold on." Her expression hardened. "You don't believe me." "I believe you miss her," I said, choosing my words carefully. She looked down at the jewelry box and whispered, "Mom said you'd say that." Her words felt like a slap. "Enough." I reached out, trying to take the box from her. The instant my hand touched the lid, a sharp pain seared through my palm. I yanked it back, cursing. The skin was red, blistering slightly, as if I'd grabbed something hot. Alina gasped. "See? She doesn't want you near it." I stared at the mark in disbelief. It looked like an imprint, a faint, circular shape. The shape of Miriam's wedding ring. "What's happening here?" I whispered. Alina just shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You don't understand. She's not angry. She's just sad. She said she's lonely." I wanted to yell, to tell her this was madness. But instead, I stood there, too numb to speak. I watched her close the box carefully, pressing her palm against it as though she was comforting someone. I left her room in silence. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. Once in the hallway, I looked down at my burned hand. The mark was faint, but it was there, a circle, complete and deliberate. I went into the bathroom and ran it under cold water, watching steam rise from my skin as if the heat was trapped inside me. When I finally went back to my room, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that whisper again, Miriam's voice, soft, familiar, calling my name. At around 3 in the morning, I gave up trying to rest. I went downstairs to make tea. The air was heavy, thick with that same floral scent, lilies and something older. As I poured hot water into the cup, I caught sight of something in the reflection of the kitchen window. Behind me, faint and translucent, stood a figure. I spun around. Nothing. But the scent lingered. I went back upstairs quietly, peering into Alina's room one last time before sunrise. She was asleep now, her breathing even. The jewelry box sat closed beside her, faintly glimmering under the moonlight leaking through the curtains. I stepped closer, unable to help myself. I needed to prove to feel that it was real. My hand hovered over the lid, afraid to touch it again. Then I noticed something. The jewelry box wasn't sitting flat. It was vibrating. Subtly. Like something inside was moving. I knelt beside the bed, pressing my ear closer. The sound was unmistakable. A whisper. Not words this time, but a rhythm. Like someone breathing through silk. "Mom?" I whispered back before I could stop myself. The whisper stopped instantly. The room went utterly still. Then Alina stirred, mumbling in her sleep, her fingers twitching as if gripping something unseen. I stood there, frozen. Every instinct screaming at me to walk away. I backed out slowly, closing the door behind me, and leaned against the wall, clutching my bandaged hand. In that moment, something became terrifyingly clear. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just grief. It wasn't just my daughter's imagination. Miriam's presence was here. In the house. In that jewelry. And somehow she wasn't done with us. The jewelry burns his hand when he reaches for it. When I looked at my palm, a faint imprint of Miriam's wedding ring was burned into my skin. The pattern was too precise, too deliberate. It couldn't have been an accident. The faint circle glowed under the bathroom light, the skin around it red and tender. It throbbed like something alive beneath my flesh. I wrapped it in gauze, my breath shaky, my mind a blur. I told myself I'd gone crazy, that this was stress or exhaustion. But deep down, a small part of me, the part that still dreamed of Miriam every night, whispered that it was her. For the next few days, the burn refused to fade. It didn't blister. It didn't scab, it just stayed, hot to the touch, as if branded by something more than fire. Every time I caught sight of it, I thought of her. And of Alina. My daughter changed too. She moved through the house like she was half asleep, her expression distant, her eyes shadowed. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at nothing, whispering softly under her breath, Once, I leaned closer and realized she was repeating Miriam's old lullaby, the one she used to sing to Alina when she was little. At night, the dreams began. I'd see Miriam standing at the end of our old garden, the wind tugging at her hair. She'd hold out her hand to me, the same hand that once wore that ring now burned into my skin. Her lips would move, but her words were always the same, echoing in my skull when I woke up. It wasn't meant for her. The dreams became more vivid, more detailed. I'd smell the jasmine from our wedding day, feel the warmth of her skin when I reached for her, and every time I woke up, my hand would ache. I started to believe she wasn't haunting me out of anger, she was warning me. By the fourth night, I couldn't take it anymore. I went into my study and started digging through old boxes of Miriam's things. I found her letters, her journals, even her family photo albums. That's when I noticed something strange in one of the photographs, a woman standing behind Miriam at her grandmother's house, wearing the same necklace now resting in the jewelry box. The photo was dated 1923. Miriam's grandmother. Curious, I dug deeper and found an old letter folded inside the album. The handwriting was elegant, foreign. The letter spoke of the heirloom that binds our blood to memory. My stomach twisted as I read on it, described how the jewelry was crafted not for beauty, but for continuity, to ensure that no woman in their family would ever be forgotten. Miriam had once laughed about family superstitions like that, calling them old stories meant to scare children. But what if it wasn't a story? The next morning, I confronted Alina. She was sitting at the kitchen table, turning Miriam's pearl earring over and over in her hand. "Alina," I said softly, "we need to talk about the jewelry." She didn't look up. "Mom says you shouldn't be afraid of it." "Mom's gone," I said, trying to steady my voice. "She's not," she whispered. "She talks to me in dreams. She says you broke your promise." I felt my chest tighten. "What promise?" Alina looked up then, her eyes glassy, almost unfocused. "She said you promised to protect her jewelry, to keep it safe. But you locked it away, you hid her." I froze. That was true. Miriam's last words before she died were about that jewelry. "Promise me you'll protect this, Marcus. It's more than it seems." At the time, I thought she meant to keep it from thieves or loss, but now I wasn't so sure. "Alina," I said, reaching for her hand. "Whatever's happening, you have to stop listening to her. It's not your mother, it's something else pretending to be her." She jerked her hand away, glaring at me. "You don't know her anymore. You forgot her." She stood and walked out of the room, leaving the earring behind. I sat there, shaking, staring at the tiny white pearl glinting in the sunlight. That night, I dreamt again. Miriam appeared at the foot of my bed, her eyes filled with sorrow. She whispered the same words. It wasn't meant for her. When I woke, the air in the room was freezing. The curtains fluttered, though the window was closed. I went to Alina's room. The door was open this time. She was asleep, breathing shallowly. The jewelry box sat open on her nightstand, every piece arranged in a perfect circle on the floor around her bed. The pattern was too intricate to be random. My heart pounded. It looked like something ritualistic. I crouched beside her, my eyes darting from one glittering piece to the next. The metal shimmered faintly in the dark, pulsing like veins of light. I reached for the bracelet nearest to me, intending to move it away. The moment my fingers brushed it, Alina gasped violently and bolted upright. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. "Don't touch it!" she screamed. "Alina, she's protecting me!" she yelled, her voice trembling. "From what?" I asked, backing away, terrified. She clutched the jewelry box to her chest. "She said you'll try to take her away from me." My breath caught. "That's not her, Alina. That's not your mother." But she just shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You don't understand. She never left. She said she's still here because of me." The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw something behind her, a shadow with Miriam's silhouette. Faint but unmistakable. I stepped back, too afraid to move closer. I knew then that whatever was happening, whatever bound Miriam's soul to that jewelry, It had chosen Alina. And if I didn't find a way to break it soon, I might lose her too. Marcus wakes up one night to find all the jewelry pieces arranged in a circle around Alina's bed. The jewelry glowed faintly as Alina slept inside the circle. It looked ritualistic, intentional. The air in her room felt thick, almost buzzing with energy. Each piece of jewelry, rings, necklaces, bracelets, formed a perfect loop around her bed, their golden surfaces pulsing with an eerie rhythm, like a slow heartbeat. The window was open just a crack, and the curtains moved as though the wind itself didn't dare come too close. I stood there in the doorway, afraid to step in, afraid to disturb whatever this was. My mind screamed to wake her, to break the circle, but something about the scene rooted me in place. Alina looked peaceful, almost serene, her face illuminated by the faint shimmer from the jewelry. For a terrifying second, she didn't look like my daughter at all. She looked older, ancient almost, like the echo of another woman entirely. I forced myself to move. Each step toward her felt heavier than the last. I reached for one of the bracelets on the floor, intending to break the pattern. The instant my fingers touched the metal, the glow intensified. Alina gasped in her sleep, her body arching upward, eyes snapping open. "Dad, don't!" she shouted. Her voice sounding layered, like two tones overlapping hers and another, softer but unmistakably Miriam's. I froze. "Alina, what's happening? What is this?" "She said you'd try to stop it," Alina whispered. "She said you'd ruin everything." "What are you talking about? Who said that?" "Mom," she answered, her tone calm now, detached. "She's protecting me." I looked down at the jewelry, the light fading back to a faint hum. "Protecting you from what?" "From being forgotten." The way she said it made my stomach twist. Miriam used to say that very phrase when she spoke about her family's history. "Our memories are our immortality, Marcus. To forget is to die twice." "Alina," I said, crouching down. "Listen to me. None of this is real. It's grief. It's your mind trying to keep your mother alive." She smiled faintly. "Then why can I hear her? Why can she touch me?" I wanted to tell her it was a dream, that she was imagining everything, but I couldn't not after what I'd seen. The glow, the burn on my hand, the whispers that called my name at night. I backed away slowly, heart pounding. "Go back to sleep," I murmured, though the words sounded hollow. "We'll talk in the morning." But I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, my thoughts racing. I knew I needed answers, real answers. There had to be a reason behind all this, something logical buried in the madness. The next day, I reached out to Nadia, a friend of Miriam's from college who worked as a historian. She specialized in folklore and antiquities, and I remembered Miriam once telling me that Nadia had researched her family's background for fun. When I called her, she sounded hesitant at first. "It's been a long time, Marcus," she said. "I know," I replied. "I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important. I need to ask you about Miriam's family and her jewelry." There was a long pause on the other end. "What about it? Have you ever heard of anything unusual tied to it?" Her voice lowered. "Unusual how?" I hesitated, glancing at the burn on my hand. "Things that don't make sense, strange feelings, voices." "Marcus," she said quietly, "you shouldn't have kept that jewelry." That single sentence sent ice through my veins. "What do you mean?" "I told Miriam once her grandmother's collection was rumored to be consecrated. Some believed the pieces were part of an old ritual. They were meant to preserve a woman's memory, her essence within the items she wore most." I swallowed hard. "You're saying they're haunted?" "I'm saying they're bound," she corrected. "If someone in the bloodline wears them, it creates a link. It keeps the spirit alive." My heart sank. "And if someone outside the bloodline tries to take them? Then the link can corrupt, especially if grief is involved." I thanked her, though the words barely escaped my mouth. The moment I hung up, I felt a presence behind me. I turned sharply, expecting Alina, but no one was there. Just the faint scent of lilies again. When I got home that evening, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I found Alina in her room, sitting cross-legged on the floor, The jewelry box was open again, and this time, she was wearing every piece. The necklaces layered down her neck, the bracelets stacked up her arms, the rings glinting on nearly every finger. Her expression was blank, eyes half closed. "Alina?" I whispered. She didn't respond. I stepped closer, my pulse quickening. "Alina, take those off. Now." Her head turned slowly toward me, and when she spoke, my blood ran cold. The voice wasn't hers, it was softer, older, familiar. "You broke your promise, Marcus." I stumbled back, my throat dry. "Miriam?" She tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You should have buried them with me." The room spun. My knees nearly gave out. "Please," I managed. "Let her go. She is me," the voice whispered through Alina's lips. "We're not separate anymore." For a brief second, her eyes flickered, Alina's brown fading to Miriam's hazel. I reached out instinctively, desperate to pull the jewelry off. But Alina, no. Miriam grabbed my wrist with unnatural strength. "Don't touch what you don't understand," she hissed. I froze, too terrified to breathe. Her grip loosened after a moment, and she smiled again. That same gentle, heartbreaking smile Miriam used to wear when she'd tell me she loved me. Then, without another word, she stood, walked past me, and shut herself in her room. I stood there in the hallway, my entire body trembling. For the first time, I realized that my wife, whatever was left of her, had found her way back through the daughter we both loved. When he calls her name, she answers in Miriam's voice. Hearing my dead wife's voice come from my daughter's mouth shattered every piece of sanity I had left. For a moment, I couldn't move. My heart stopped, my breath caught, and time itself seemed to pause. The voice was unmistakable, soft, low, calm, just as I remembered it from the nights Miriam used to wake me from nightmares and whisper that everything would be all right. Only now, it wasn't all right. It was horrifying. "Alina?" I whispered, my throat dry. "Say something else." She smiled faintly, her eyes unfocused. "You shouldn't have kept it, Marcus. You know that." The way she said my name, it wasn't how Alina said it. It was how Miriam used to say it. Slowly, lovingly, but laced with disappointment. "Stop," I said, stepping closer. "Please, stop. Do you remember the promise you made me?" she asked, tilting her head. My chest tightened. "Miriam, if that's you," she cut me off. "You swore to protect me, and yet you left me alone in the dark." Her voice trembled on that last word, and tears welled in her eyes. For a second, I saw my daughter beneath the surface, fighting to come through. "Alina," I said urgently, gripping her shoulders. "You're stronger than this. Don't let her in. Do you hear me?" Her eyes flickered, Alina's brown returning for a heartbeat before the hazel bled back in. "She doesn't understand," the softer voice whispered. "She's too young to carry me." That sentence hit me like a knife. Carry me. Was Miriam's spirit using her? Feeding through her? I let go, backing away slowly. "What do you want from her?" "To stay," she said simply. "To be remembered." I shook my head, my voice cracking. "You can't stay like this. You're hurting her." "She's fine," she said, smiling faintly. "She's part of me now. Don't take her away again." The words again echoed through my skull. I stumbled out of her room and closed the door behind me, pressing my back against it. My knees went weak, and I slid to the floor. I couldn't tell where the supernatural ended and the psychological began. Over the next few days, the situation only worsened. Some mornings, Alina was her old self, quiet, kind, distant but real. Other mornings, she woke speaking in fragments of memories that weren't hers. She'd recall moments she could never have witnessed: our honeymoon, the day Miriam first found out she was pregnant, even arguments Miriam and I had behind closed doors. Once, I found her in the kitchen, humming to herself. It was Miriam's song, the one she used to hum while cooking dinner. I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the attic, where I had stored Miriam's old journals and photos. I needed proof. I needed to see if anything could explain this nightmare. In one of the boxes, I found her final journal, the one she'd kept in the months before she died. Her handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. The last entry stopped me cold. If I die before Alina grows, promise me you'll bury my memories with me. Don't let them linger. They'll cling, they always do. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. She had warned me, she knew, and I had ignored her. I flipped through the rest of the pages, searching for more clues, when I noticed something odd: recent ink stains, still faintly wet. And at the very bottom of one page, a line written in smooth, flowing handwriting. He promised to bury me with my treasures. The ink was fresh. I ran my fingers over it. It hadn't been there before. I slammed the book shut, my pulse hammering in my ears. That night, I found Alina sitting by the window, staring out at the moonlight. "Mom says you finally understand," she said without turning around. "Understand what?" I asked, my voice low. "That she doesn't belong in the ground." I stepped forward carefully. "Alina, please, listen to me. Whatever this is, it's not her. It's using her memories, her voice." She turned then, and the look in her eyes silenced me. There was love there, yes, but also something cold, something old. "She's not gone," Alina said gently. "You brought her back when you refused to let go." I opened my mouth to protest, but the house trembled faintly. The lights flickered, and a gust of air swept through the hallway. Somewhere, a door slammed shut. "Do you feel that?" Alina whispered. "She's here." I backed away, shaking my head. "I can't do this." But even as I turned to leave, I heard it again, the same whisper, soft as breath. "Marcus." The sound came from everywhere and nowhere at once. I ran to my room, shutting the door behind me. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone. I needed help, someone who could make sense of this. I thought of Nadia again. Maybe she knew more. Maybe she could tell me how to break whatever bond had been created. When I called her, she answered immediately, as if she'd been expecting me. "Marcus," she said, her voice low. "Has she spoken?" I hesitated. "You mean Miriam?" "Yes." She used Alina's voice. "It's like she's inside her." Nadia sighed heavily. "Then it's too late for half measures. The jewelry must be buried with her body. Every piece. Only then can the bond break." My stomach turned. "You mean I have to dig up Miriam's grave?" "It's the only way to end this." The words echoed in my head long after the call ended. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, dark circles under my eyes, my burned palm still throbbing. Behind me, I saw movement. Alina stood in the doorway, smiling faintly. "Talking to Nadia won't help," she said, her tone calm. But her eyes were not her own. My breath caught. "How do you—" "She told me everything," Alina interrupted. "But you can't bury her. She won't let you." I stepped back, terrified. "Who are you talking about?" "Mom," she said softly. "She said you broke your promise once, you won't do it again." The air turned icy, the lights dimming. My skin prickled with static. "Alina, please," I whispered. Her lips curved into a faint smile, the same smile Miriam gave me the night before she died. The last line reads, "He promised to bury me with my treasures." That sentence, "bury me with my treasures," stabbed through my mind like a curse remembered too late. It echoed in my head as I sat there staring at Miriam's journal. The ink still fresh. The words too deliberate to be coincidence. I could almost hear her voice in my ear, whispering the same phrase, reminding me of what I'd failed to do. She had asked me to bury her jewelry with her. She'd made me promise. And I hadn't. I told myself it was because I couldn't let go. Because giving up that box meant closing the last door between us. But maybe that door was never supposed to stay open. The next morning, I woke from another nightmare drenched in sweat. Miriam's face haunted every dream now. Sometimes she was smiling, sometimes she was crying, but always. She was reaching for me from beneath the soil. Her hand outstretched, pale and trembling, with the wedding ring gleaming on her finger. When I went downstairs, Alina was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, her breakfast untouched. She looked exhausted, her eyes ringed with dark shadows. "Did you sleep?" I asked. She shook her head slowly. "Mom kept me up." I stiffened. "What did she say?" "She said you're finally remembering," Alina whispered. "She said it's time." "Time for what?" "To make things right." There was something off about the way she said it. Too calm, too certain. Like she wasn't guessing she knew. I sat across from her. "Alina, listen to me. I broke that promise years ago. But if this is about burying the jewelry, then maybe I can fix it." She looked up then, her expression softening for the first time in days. "She wants you to," she said quietly. "But she doesn't trust you." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "She said if you really loved her, you'd have done it already." That stung more than it should have. "I loved her," I said, my voice cracking. "More than anything." Alina just stared at me, unblinking. "Then prove it." I felt the air go cold between us. My pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to tell her this was madness, that she was being manipulated, but the truth was, I didn't know what to believe anymore. By afternoon, I couldn't shake the feeling that Miriam was everywhere. The house creaked differently, like it was breathing in rhythm with something unseen. The mirrors fogged up on their own, and sometimes, when I wiped them clean, I thought I saw her reflection standing behind mine. That night, I drove to the cemetery. I don't know what I expected to feel: guilty, relieved, terrified. Probably all three. The air was damp, and the moon hung low, veiled by thin clouds. I parked by the gates and walked the familiar path to Miriam's grave. The grass was overgrown, the headstones slick with dew. I knelt, brushing my fingers over the engraving of her name. Miriam Holloway, beloved wife and mother. "I should have buried it with you," I whispered. "You asked me to, and I didn't listen. I'm sorry." The wind stirred gently, carrying the faint scent of lilies, her scent. For a moment, I thought I felt warmth brush against my cheek, like a ghostly touch. But then, something strange caught my attention. The soil around the headstone looked disturbed, like it had been dug up and refilled. Fresh earth, slightly darker than the rest. My heart skipped a beat. I reached down and pressed my hand to the ground. The dirt was loose. A shiver ran through me. "No," I muttered. "No one would have," but even as I said it, I knew better. I stumbled back, my knees weak. I didn't dig. I couldn't. The idea of finding that jewelry box already waiting there, half buried, terrified me too much. I went home shaken. When I stepped inside, the house was silent. But something was wrong. The air was thicker, heavier. "Alina?" I called. No answer. I checked the living room, then the kitchen. Finally, I found her in her bedroom, sitting on the edge of her bed, her hands clasped in her lap. The jewelry box sat beside her, empty. My stomach dropped. "Where is it?" "She took it," Alina said quietly. I froze. "Who?" She looked up at me with hollow eyes. "Mom." The words hung in the air like smoke. I sat down. Beside her, my hands shaking. "Alina, tell me what you mean." "She said it was time," she whispered. "That you'd understand, that she can't rest until you do what you promised." The back of my neck prickled. "You're telling me the jewelry's gone?" She nodded slowly. "She said she's waiting." I swallowed hard. "Waiting where?" Alina's lips parted, but no sound came out. Then, in a voice that wasn't entirely hers, she whispered, "Where you left her." That night, I dreamt again. I was standing in the cemetery, moonlight glinting off the headstone. Miriam was there this time, half visible, her form translucent and wavering. She smiled sadly, her hand outstretched. "You remember now," she said softly. "You know what to do." I tried to move, to speak, but my legs felt like stone. She pointed to the ground beside her grave. "Bring it home," she said. "Or bury it where I sleep. Don't make me wait again." When I woke, the smell of lilies filled my room, strong and suffocating. I knew what had to be done. That night, Marcus dreams of Miriam standing at the foot of her grave, beckoning him closer. In the dream, Miriam's voice was clearer than ever. She wanted me to return what was hers. When I woke, my heart was pounding so violently it felt like the bed itself trembled beneath me. For a few seconds, I just lay there, drenched in sweat, staring at the ceiling, hearing her words echo through my mind. Bring it home, or bury it where I sleep. The line blurred between command and plea. I sat up and rubbed my face, the weight of exhaustion crushing me. The air in my room still smelled faintly of lilies. The scent was no longer a comfort, it was a warning. I knew now that the jewelry wasn't just a collection of heirlooms. It was a tether, a chain keeping Miriam tied to this world through our grief. The morning light spilled through the curtains, but it felt wrong, too pale. Downstairs, Alina was sitting at the kitchen table again, pale and distant, as if she hadn't slept. She didn't look up when I entered. She talked to you again, didn't she? I asked quietly. She nodded. She said, you finally understand. My throat tightened. Then she knows what I'm going to do. Alina's eyes flickered up to meet mine. She said you'll try, but it won't work unless I'm there. I frowned. What are you talking about? She said the jewelry needs both of us, the one who promised and the one who carries her. I felt my stomach twist. No, Alina. You're not coming anywhere near that grave. She didn't argue. She just looked at me with that eerie calm she'd begun to wear lately. She won't let you do it alone. Her certainty unnerved me. But deep down, I knew she wasn't wrong. That night, I packed the jewelry box. Every piece I could find, the earrings, the necklaces, the rings, everything except one item. The pendant with the emerald center was missing. I tore the house apart searching for it, but it was gone. When I returned to Alina's room, she was asleep, clutching something in her hand. Gently, I pried her fingers open. The emerald pendant glimmered faintly in her palm, warm to the touch. I slipped it free, whispering an apology, and placed it back in the box. Dad? Her voice startled me. I froze. Go back to sleep, sweetheart. Her eyes were half open, unfocused. Mom's waiting. A chill ran down my spine. I know, I whispered. After she drifted back to sleep, I took the jewelry box, wrapped it in a blanket, and left the house. The drive to the cemetery was a blur. The road stretched endlessly, swallowed by fog. The headlights carved through the mist, but it felt like the world beyond them didn't exist. When I finally arrived, the air was heavy, dense, almost humming. The iron gates creaked as I pushed them open, the sound cutting through the silence like a warning. Miriam's grave was easy to find. I didn't need light to guide me. My feet knew the path. The earth around her plot still looked unsettled, soft and darker than the rest. I knelt and set the jewelry box beside me, my hands trembling. I'm sorry, I whispered into the stillness. I should have done this years ago. For a moment, the night remained quiet. Then a faint breeze stirred, brushing across my face like a sigh. The air smelled of lilies again, stronger than before. I began to dig. My fingers clawed at the earth, the soil cold and damp. Every handful felt heavier, as if the ground resisted me. When I'd made enough space, I reached for the box. But before I could lower it, a voice broke the silence. Dad! I froze. Slowly, I turned. Alina stood a few feet away, barefoot, her hair tangled, her eyes glassy under the moonlight. What are you doing here? I hissed, standing up. You shouldn't be here. She told me to come, she said softly. She said you'd need help. Her gaze shifted to the box in my hands. She's angry, Dad. I'm trying to fix this, I said, my voice cracking. This is what she wanted. Alina shook her head slowly. No. She wants us both. She said if you bury her things, we'll all be together again. I took a step back, shaking my head in disbelief. That's not her talking, Alina. That's something else. Her expression didn't change. She took a slow step forward, then another. She's been so lonely, Dad. The ground beneath us trembled faintly, a low vibration that made my knees weak. Alina, please, I begged. Go home, I'll finish this. She stopped just short of me, her eyes fixed on the jewelry box. She doesn't want to go back in the ground. The wind picked up suddenly, cold and violent. The grass flattened around us in waves, and the air seemed to hum with a low, rhythmic sound like the echo of distant whispers. Alina cried out, clutching her head. Get behind me, I shouted, grabbing her arm. But when I touched her, the jewelry box jerked violently out of my other hand, as though pulled by invisible strings. The lid flew open, and every piece of jewelry rose slowly into the air, suspended by an unseen force. They glowed soft gold, pure white light, and then circled above Miriam's grave like fireflies in formation. Alina fell to her knees, sobbing. She says it's your fault. You left her alone. I'm sorry, I shouted to the night, tears blurring my vision. I didn't know. I thought keeping it meant keeping her close. The light grew brighter, almost blinding. The wind howled through the cemetery, scattering leaves and dust. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The jewelry dropped into the open soil all at once, the sound sharp and final. I grabbed the box and forced the lid shut, my heart hammering. I shoved it into the hole I'd dug and began covering it with dirt, my hands moving desperately, frantically. As the last handful of soil fell, the air stilled. The night went silent again. I turned to Alina. She was lying on the ground, still and pale. My heart lurched. I rushed to her, shaking her shoulders. Alina! Wake up! Her eyelids fluttered open slowly. Her eyes were brown again, hers, not Miriam's. Dad? She whispered weakly. I'm here, I said, choking back tears. It's over. She looked around in confusion, then at the grave. She's gone, isn't she? I nodded. Yes, she's gone. But even as I said it, I felt the ground beneath us pulse once like a faint heartbeat. Marcus realizes the only way to stop it is to fulfill Miriam's dying wish. I decided that night I would bury the jewelry with Miriam, no matter the cost. I thought the ritual at her grave had ended things, but I was wrong. It was only the beginning. The next morning, Alina woke up pale and feverish, her skin clammy, her pulse weak. She didn't remember much from the night before, only flashes of light, my shouting, and the sound of her mother's voice echoing through the trees. When I tried to explain, she shook her head and said softly, I think she's still here. Her words chilled me. I could still feel the ground's faint pulse from the night before, like something buried alive was trying to breathe. I told myself I'd imagined it, but the way Alina's eyes lingered toward the window told me she felt it too. I didn't go to work. I couldn't. I spent the day pacing the living room, staring at the wall where Miriam's photograph hung. I'd put it back up months ago, thinking it was a small act of healing. Now, her eyes seemed to follow me wherever I moved. That evening, I made my decision. I would do it properly this time. Not half measures, not rushed by panic or fear. I would dig deep enough, far enough, to make sure every last piece of her jewelry rested with her, where it should have been all along. I waited until Alina had fallen asleep. I packed a shovel, a lantern, and a small tin box where I'd placed the jewelry. Each piece felt heavier than it should have, almost reluctant to be moved. The air in the house was unnaturally still as I stepped out the door. The night was darker than usual. No stars, no moon, just an endless curtain of black stretching over the cemetery. The moment I crossed through the gates, the air changed. It felt colder, thicker. My breath came out in clouds. I found Miriam's grave easily. Even in the dark, I could sense it, like it was calling me. The earth seemed softer than before, as if waiting. I set the lantern down beside me, its flicker casting long, uneasy shadows across the gravestones. Then I began to dig. Every sound was magnified, the scrape of the shovel, the rustle of leaves, my own uneven breathing. I thought of the first time I saw Miriam smile, the way her eyes sparkled when she held Alina for the first time, the warmth in her voice when she told me she'd never leave us. I had no idea what never truly meant until now. After what felt like hours, I had dug deep enough. The lantern's flame wavered, and for a moment, I thought I heard something beneath the soil, a faint sigh, like a woman breathing in her sleep. I tried to ignore it, and lifted the box. Before I could lower it into the ground, I heard a soft voice behind me. "Dad." My heart nearly stopped. I turned. Alina stood at the edge of the lantern light, barefoot again, her nightgown clinging to her legs. Her hair was damp from the mist, her eyes wide and distant. "What are you doing here?" I whispered. "I told you to stay home." "She woke me," she said simply. "She said you were leaving her again." "No," I said quickly. "I'm fixing it. I'm doing what she wanted." Alina stepped closer, shaking her head. "She doesn't want to be buried. She wants to come home." The way she said it, it wasn't pleading. It was warning. I took a shaky breath, clutching the jewelry box to my chest. "This is the only way to stop it, Alina. It's what she asked for. It's what she needs. She said you don't understand," Alina whispered. "She said she's still waiting for both of us." The ground trembled faintly beneath our feet. My grip on the box tightened. "No," I muttered. "That ends tonight." I turned back to the grave, kneeling down, ready to set the box in the hole. But before I could, Alina screamed. "Don't!" Her voice cracked through the night like thunder. The air shifted violently, and the lantern went out. I was plunged into total darkness. I heard Alina sobbing behind me, her voice broken. "She's angry. You're making it worse." The wind howled through the cemetery, whipping at my clothes, tearing through the grass. The soil began to move, not by my hand this time, but as if something beneath it was stirring. I dropped the shovel and stumbled back, my heart racing. From the disturbed earth, a faint glow began to seep upward, gold and white light, pulsing like veins through the dirt. "Dad!" Alina cried. "She's waking up." "No," I whispered, backing away. "No, no, no." The ground split slightly, and I swore I saw something glint, a fragment of metal, a chain perhaps, rising out of the soil. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The glow faded. The air stilled. I dropped to my knees, shaking. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Alina knelt beside me, her face streaked with tears. "She doesn't want to stay down there," she whispered. I turned to her, gripping her shoulders. "Listen to me. This ends now. Do you hear me? It ends tonight." She stared at me, trembling. "If you bury her again, she'll take something with her." I hesitated, fear gripping me. "What do you mean?" "She said someone has to stay with her so she won't be alone." I felt the blood drain from my face. The wind began to pick up again, softly this time, as though the world was waiting for me to make a choice. I looked down at the open grave, at the box in my hands, then at my daughter, the only piece of Miriam I had left. My chest ached. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "But this is the only way." I lowered the jewelry box into the earth. The moment it touched the bottom, a soft sigh filled the air, almost human. The soil seemed to settle, accepting it. Alina swayed, her eyes fluttering shut. "Dad!" I caught her as she fell forward, her body limp but warm. I pressed my ear to her chest. Her heartbeat was faint but still there. I held her close as I began to cover the box with soil, each scoop feeling like a confession. The night grew calm, the wind fading to a gentle whisper. By the time I finished, Alina stirred, her breathing deepening. Her eyes opened slowly, brown, clear. Her own again. "Is it over?" she whispered. I looked at the grave. Then, at her. "I think so," I said. But the earth, beneath my knees, exhaled a cold, final breath. The soil beneath them exhales a cold breath as he covers the box. The moment I covered the jewelry, the wind stopped and so did Alina's pulse. For one horrifying second, my world collapsed into silence. I couldn't hear the rustle of the trees, the hum of the night, or even my own heartbeat. All I could feel was her body, limp in my arms, her head resting against my chest. "No, no, no," I gasped, pressing my ear to her chest. Nothing. I laid her gently on the damp grass and began CPR, counting under my breath, praying between every push of my palms. Come on, baby, please. My voice cracked with each breath I gave her. Then, just as I was about to break, her body jerked violently. She gasped a sharp, desperate breath that cut through the night air. Her eyes shot open. For an instant, they weren't brown, they were hazel, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Miriam's eyes. My heart froze. Then they faded back to brown, and she blinked up at me in confusion. Dad? She whispered hoarsely. I didn't realize I was crying until the tears fell onto her cheek. You're okay, I said, my voice shaking. You're okay. She looked around at the grave, at the disturbed soil, at my mud-covered hands. Did you bury it? I nodded. It's done. The air was still now. Unnaturally still. Even the usual night sounds, the crickets. The wind through the branches had vanished. I lifted Alina to her feet, and we stood together, staring at the mound of fresh dirt. There was no light, no movement, no whisper, just silence. We walked back to the car without speaking. The drive home felt endless. Alina fell asleep before we reached the house, her head resting against the window. I watched her chest rise and fall with every breath, terrified that if I blinked, she'd stop breathing again. When we got home, I carried her upstairs and tucked her into bed. For the first time in weeks, her face looked peaceful. I lingered in the doorway, unsure if I dared to hope. Then I went to my room and collapsed on the bed, staring at the ceiling until exhaustion finally pulled me under. When I woke the next morning, sunlight streamed through the window. It felt wrong somehow, too bright, too clean. For a few seconds, I forgot everything that had happened. Then I looked at my hand. The burn, the ring-shaped imprint that had haunted me for weeks was gone. My skin was smooth again. I stumbled out of bed and rushed to Alina's room. She was awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed, drawing in her sketchbook. She looked up and smiled. Morning. It had been so long since I'd seen her smile like that. My throat tightened. How do you feel? She shrugged. Tired, but lighter, I guess. Her voice was steady, her eyes clear. There was no trace of Miriam in her face, just my daughter. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of peace. We had breakfast together, quiet but warm. No whispers, no flickering lights, no perfume in the air. It was as if the house itself was exhaling after years of holding its breath. For the next few days, I dared to believe it was over. Alina returned to her normal routines, schoolwork, painting, laughing with friends over the phone. At night, the house stayed still. I slept through without hearing my name, whispered in the dark. But peace, I learned, doesn't erase guilt. I visited Miriam's grave a week later, bringing a bouquet of lilies. The earth had settled, the grass already beginning to grow back. I stood there for a long time, speaking softly to her headstone. It's done, I said. You're free now. Rest, please. The wind stirred faintly, and for a moment, I thought I heard a sigh. But it wasn't angry, it wasn't mournful, it was relieved. That night, I dreamed of her again. She stood in the sunlight, her dress flowing, her smile tender. Thank you, she whispered, for letting me go. When I woke, the air in my room was still, peaceful. For the first time since she died, I didn't feel haunted. I felt forgiven. Months passed. Seasons shifted. Alina's laughter returned to the house like a melody I thought I'd forgotten. She started talking about college art school, specifically. She said she wanted to paint memories, the kind that make you ache and heal at the same time. Miriam would have loved that. One evening, as autumn set in, we sat together on the porch, watching the leaves fall. You ever think she's still with us? Alina asked softly. I smiled faintly. Maybe. But not the way she was before. She feels happy, Alina said, her gaze distant. Like she's where she's supposed to be. I nodded. Yeah, I think so too. For the first time in a long while, I believed it. I went to bed that night feeling something I hadn't felt in years: peace. But peace has a way of fading when you least expect it. A few days later, Alina came home from school holding a small brown package. "This came for me," she said, setting it on the table. There was no return address. Only one line scrawled across the front in elegant, looping handwriting. "For my daughter." My heart dropped. I knew that handwriting. Alina opened the box while I stood frozen. Inside was a small velvet pouch. She reached in and pulled out a single item, Miriam's wedding ring. "How?" I whispered, my voice breaking. Alina looked up at me, confused. "Dad, I thought you buried everything." "I did," I said, backing away. "I buried all of it." She frowned, turning the ring over in her fingers. "It's just a ring. Maybe someone found it?" I shook my head. "No. No one could have." She looked at me uncertainly. "Can I keep it?" I swallowed hard, unable to speak. "It's Mom's," she said softly. "It feels wrong to throw it away." I forced my voice out. "Don't. Wear it, Alina. Please. Promise me." She hesitated but finally nodded. "Okay." She placed it on the table and went upstairs. I stared at the ring for a long time, my pulse thundering in my ears. The metal gleamed faintly in the dim light, catching the reflection of the window. For a brief second, I could have sworn I saw Miriam's face in that reflection, smiling faintly. Until the day she receives a small package with Miriam's handwriting on it. When Alina called me into the room, holding that package, I felt the air vanish from my lungs. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stared at the small brown parcel sitting on the kitchen counter. I recognized the handwriting instantly, those elegant, looping letters. Miriam's. I'd seen it 1,000 times on love notes, grocery lists, birthday cards. There was no mistaking it. My first thought was denial. Maybe it was some cruel coincidence, a relative trying to comfort Alina, or an old letter that somehow got lost in the mail. But no. The ink looked fresh. The paper was new, and written across the top were the words, "From Mom." Alina looked up at me, her brow furrowed. "Dad, did you send this?" I shook my head slowly. "No." "Then who?" she began. But I interrupted her. "Don't open it," I said sharply, stepping forward. Her eyes widened. "It's just a package." "No, it's not," I whispered. "Nothing from her is just anything." But Alina didn't listen. Her fingers were already sliding under the flap. She opened the box and froze. Inside was a small velvet pouch, tied neatly with a silk ribbon. She untied it, and when she turned it over into her palm, a single piece of jewelry fell out, a gold ring. Miriam's wedding ring. The sight of it nearly brought me to my knees. I knew that ring. I'd buried it. I'd watched it fall into the soil. I'd covered it with my own hands. Alina turned it in her fingers, the gold catching the light. "It's hers," she whispered. "It's really hers. Don't touch it," I snapped. Louder than I meant to. She jumped, staring at me like I'd lost my mind. "Dad, it's just Mom's ring." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "No. It's not just a ring. It's part of her. Everything I buried with her, it was binding her there. If this came back, it means she's not." I stopped myself. "Not what?" Alina pressed. I met her gaze, not resting. Her face softened with pity, not fear. "Dad," she said gently. "I think you're still grieving. It's okay. Maybe someone found it, or maybe you missed it when—" "I didn't miss it," I barked. "I buried it all." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Alina set the ring down carefully on the counter. "Okay," she said softly. "If it scares you that much, we can lock it away." She meant well, but her calmness only unsettled me more. That night, after she went to bed, I placed the ring inside an old metal box and locked it in my desk drawer. I didn't want to look at it again. But when I turned off the lights, I could still feel it, like a faint pulse, a heartbeat vibrating through the walls. Sleep didn't come easily. I kept hearing soft footsteps in the hallway, the creak of floorboards outside my room. Every time I opened the door, the hall was empty, silent. Around 3 a.m., I woke suddenly to a sound. Metal scraping on wood. I sat up, listening. It was coming from downstairs. I crept to the study, my heart pounding. The drawer where I'd locked the ring was open. The box was gone. My stomach dropped. "Alina?" I called out quietly. No answer. I checked her room. She was fast asleep, her breathing steady. I turned back toward the stairs and froze. The front door was cracked open, just slightly, and cold night air drifted inside. I stepped out into the backyard, barefoot, the grass wet beneath my feet. The moon hung low, casting long silver shadows across the lawn. And, there, half buried in the dirt near the flower bed, was the metal box. The lid was open, the ring lying perfectly still inside, glinting up at me as though waiting. I knelt, my breath fogging in the air. "You can't have it back," I whispered. "You had your peace, don't do this." But even as I said it, I felt warmth radiating from the ring, faint at first, then stronger, like a living thing. I slammed the lid shut and buried the box right there in the soil, my hands shaking. When I stood, the wind picked up suddenly, rustling the leaves around me. The scent of lilies filled the air again, stronger than it had been in months. "Stop," I said, my voice breaking. "Please stop." The wind died instantly. The silence that followed felt like a warning. I went back inside and locked every door, every window. I checked on Alina again. She was still asleep, peaceful, her hand tucked under her cheek. But when I turned to leave, something caught my eye. On her nightstand, under the dim glow of the lamp, sat the ring, perfectly clean, perfectly placed. I froze. My mind reeled. I had just buried it. There was no way. My pulse thundered in my ears as I reached for it. The metal was cool to the touch, cooler than it should have been. I turned it over in my fingers, and for a split second, I thought I saw something inside the reflection, a woman's face, faint and smiling. I jerked my hand back, the ring falling onto the wooden surface with a dull clink. "Dad?" Alina's voice startled me. She was sitting up now, her hair messy, her eyes heavy with sleep. "What are you doing?" Nothing," I said quickly. "Go back to sleep." She frowned. "Why are you holding Mom's ring?" I looked down. The ring was back in my hand. I didn't even remember picking it up. "I just thought I'd put it away," I muttered. "Dad," she said softly. "You're scaring me." I swallowed hard and nodded. "I know, I'm sorry." I left the room, clutching the ring like it might disappear if I let go. In the hallway mirror, my reflection looked pale and hollow. Behind me, just over my shoulder, a faint figure seemed to shimmer Miriam's outline, half seen, almost smiling. Marcus realizes Miriam's spirit might never truly rest. The ring felt warm when I picked it up, as if it had been waiting for me. I should have thrown it away that night. I should have taken it and hurled it into the river, buried it in concrete, anything but what I actually did, because when I closed my fist around that tiny band of gold, I swear I felt a pulse. A single faint heartbeat that wasn't mine. I stood there in the hallway, frozen. My chest tightened, my throat went dry. Somewhere deep inside me, something whispered that Miriam wasn't done with me yet. That the jewelry wasn't just her memory, it was her anchor. I walked back into my study and sat down. The ring still in my palm. The faint glow from the desk lamp made it glimmer like firelight. My reflection curved across its surface, distorted, warped, like the gold itself was alive. I turned it over between my fingers, staring at it until my eyes blurred. "Why did you come back?" I whispered. For a moment, I thought I heard something so soft it could have been a trick of the wind. "Because you called me." I froze. The voice was unmistakable. Miriam's. My breath caught in my chest. "No," I said under my breath. "I let you go. You told me you were at peace." The ring pulsed once, faint but undeniable. I didn't sleep that night. I sat there until dawn, staring at that tiny circle of gold like it might suddenly move on its own. And when the first light of morning touched the window, I made the worst mistake of all. I put it on. The metal was cold at first, then quickly warmed, molding to my skin like it belonged there. I exhaled shakily, closing my eyes. In that instant, I wasn't in my study anymore. I was standing in a field of white lilies. The sunlight was soft, golden, warm on my skin, and in front of me stood Miriam. She looked exactly as I remembered, her hair falling in soft waves, her eyes full of that quiet tenderness I used to fall asleep to. She smiled sadly. "You finally kept your promise," she said. "Miriam." I breathed. "What's happening?" "You buried the jewelry. You freed me from the ground. But one piece still called to you." I looked at the ring. It gleamed faintly in the light. "You sent it back." She nodded. "It was never meant to rest with the others. This one was ours." Her voice trembled, and she stepped closer, placing her cold hand over my chest. "Every vow we made, every word we spoke, it stayed here. I wanted to tell her I missed her, that every night since she died I'd looked for her in empty rooms and fading photographs. But before I could speak, her expression changed, her smile turning sorrowful. "You shouldn't have put it on," she whispered. The world around me started to twist. The lilies wilted, the sunlight dimmed. Miriam's eyes darkened, her form beginning to flicker. "Now you've opened the door again." "Wait!" I cried. "Tell me how to close it." She reached for my face, her touch cold and trembling. "You can't. It was never meant to be closed." The next thing I knew, I was back in my study, gasping for air, my hand burning where the ring sat on my finger. I tried to pull it off, but it wouldn't budge. My skin had already started to redden beneath it. "Dad?" Alina's voice came from the doorway. I turned sharply. She stood there in her pajamas, her face pale with fear. "What's wrong?" she asked, her eyes darting to my hand. "I can't get it off," I said through clenched teeth, tugging at the ring. She stepped closer, her brow furrowed. "You shouldn't have worn it." "I know," I whispered. "I just wanted to understand." She grabbed my wrist, trying to twist the ring loose. The moment her fingers touched it, a jolt of energy shot through us both. She cried out and stumbled back, clutching her chest. "Dad!" she gasped. "She's inside." The lights flickered. I could feel it now, the cold weight settling in my chest, pressing against my heart. My vision swam, the room fading at the edges. Miriam's voice filled my head, soft but insistent. "You called me. You wanted me back." "No," I said, falling to my knees. "I wanted to let you go. You never wanted that," she whispered. "You kept every piece of me." I looked up, and for a heartbeat, the air shimmered. Miriam stood behind Alina, her hand resting gently on our daughter's shoulder. "Mom?" Alina whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Miriam smiled faintly. "You're safe now." Her gaze shifted to me. "Both of you are." The lights steadied, and just as suddenly as it began, the pressure in my chest lifted. I gasped for air, collapsing forward. When I looked at my hand, the ring was gone. Alina knelt beside me, sobbing. "What happened?" I shook my head, trembling. "She forgave us," I whispered. "She finally forgave us." For the first time in a long time, the air felt still again. That night, Alina fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from tears. I sat beside her, staring at my bare hand. It looked untouched, no burn, no mark. For a moment, I believed it was over. But sometime after midnight, I woke to a faint light in Alina's room. I stood in the doorway, frozen. The ring was back, resting on her nightstand, glowing faintly in the dark. I stepped closer, my throat dry. The light from the ring pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. Then, faintly, I heard a whisper, Miriam's voice, calm and distant. "The bond can't be broken, Marcus, only transferred." My knees went weak. I turned toward Alina. She was asleep, peaceful. Her face bathed in that soft, golden light. I sank to the floor beside her bed, whispering through trembling lips, "Please, not her, take me instead." The light flickered once, twice, and then dimmed to nothing. The ring sat still. I exhaled, shaking. Alina stirred, opening her eyes. "Dad? I'm here," I whispered. She smiled faintly, half asleep. Mom says she forgives us both. Tears filled my eyes. Go back to sleep, sweetheart. She drifted off again, breathing evenly. I stayed there for hours, staring at the ring until dawn crept through the curtains. When I finally looked down, the ring was gone once more, leaving only a faint golden circle imprinted on the wood where it had rested. But later that night, she finds the ring glowing faintly on her bedside table. I never told Alina that I still feel Miriam's presence whenever I close my eyes. Weeks passed, and life seemed normal again, or as close to normal as it could be after everything we'd endured. The house was quiet, the nights calm, no whispers, no flickering lights. The ring hadn't reappeared. At least, not for her, but for me, it never truly left. Every time I drifted off to sleep, I'd feel a gentle pressure on my chest, like a hand resting there. Not heavy, not threatening, just familiar. Sometimes I'd hear her voice, not words, just a hum, the same soft melody she used to sing while washing dishes or tucking Alina in as a child. I would wake with tears on my face and a warmth in my hand, though there was nothing there when I opened it. I told myself it was grief, habit, memory. But deep down, I knew better. Miriam wasn't haunting me out of malice. She was watching, guarding, loving in the only way she could, now from somewhere between here and whatever came next. She was finally smiling again, her color back, her laughter returning in small bursts. The darkness that had shadowed her for months seemed to fade. I wasn't going to drag her back into mine. She started painting again, portraits mostly, but every canvas, no matter the subject, carried something familiar. A tilt of the head, the curve of a smile, the glimmer in the eyes. Each one looked a little like Miriam. I asked her about it once. I just paint what feels right, she said with a shrug. Sometimes it feels like she's helping me. Her words should have scared me. Instead, they comforted me. Our bond, strained and broken by grief, began to mend. We ate dinner together again. We talked about her future art school, moving to the city, chasing dreams Miriam had once nurtured for both of us. For the first time since her mother died, Alina seemed genuinely excited about something. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. It started subtly. A faint glint in the mirror when no one else was around. The smell of lilies in a closed room. Sometimes I'd wake to find the curtains gently swaying, even when the windows were sealed tight. I told myself it was imagination, grief, residual energy. But deep down, I knew it was her. Still here, still bound. One evening, I came home to find Alina sitting in the living room, staring at an unfinished painting. The canvas showed a woman standing in a field of white lilies, her hands clasped, her expression peaceful. "Who is she?" I asked softly, though I already knew. Alina smiled faintly. "You know who?" I did. "Miriam." She set her paintbrush down and turned toward me. "Do you think Mom's really gone?" I hesitated. "I think she's where she needs to be." Alina studied me for a long moment. "You don't sound sure." I forced a smile. "Sometimes it's enough just to believe she's happy." She nodded slowly, then returned to her painting. I watched her for a while, the way she mixed colors, the concentration on her face. There was something serene about her in that moment, something I hadn't seen since she was a child. Later that night, I went to visit Miriam's grave. I didn't bring flowers this time. I just needed to talk. The cemetery was silent, bathed in silver moonlight. I stood over her headstone and let the cool breeze wash over me. "I did what you asked," I whispered. "It's over now. You can rest." The wind stirred the grass gently. I closed my eyes and imagined her standing beside me. "Thank you," I murmured, "for staying as long as you did. But you don't have to anymore." When I opened my eyes, something caught my attention. The soil near the base of her headstone looked unsettled. Not freshly dug, but uneven. I knelt, tracing the dirt with my fingers. It felt colder than the rest of the ground. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it again. But as I stood, I felt that same faint vibration through my boots, a heartbeat deep in the earth. I left before I could lose my nerve. The next morning, I found Alina standing at the window, staring toward the garden. "You were out late," she said quietly. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. She didn't look at me when she asked, "Did you go see her?" "Yes," I admitted. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's not angry anymore." I wanted to ask how she knew that, but something in her tone stopped me. She wasn't afraid. She sounded certain. That night, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside. I looked out the window and saw Alina, barefoot, walking across the yard toward the back fence. I grabbed a jacket and followed her quietly. She was standing near the edge of the property, by the patch of earth where I had buried the jewelry that had resurfaced weeks ago. The moonlight shimmered over her hair as she knelt, pressing her hands into the dirt. "Alina?" I whispered, stepping closer. She turned, startled. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly. "I just wanted to make sure it stayed buried." I joined her, kneeling beside her. The soil was cool, damp from dew. For a long moment, we didn't speak. "I miss her," she whispered. "I know," I said. "So do I." We stayed like that for a while, both of us lost in silence. Then she leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder. "I forgive you," she said quietly. My throat tightened. "For what?" "For keeping her too long," she whispered. I didn't have an answer. I looked down at the ground, at the faint indentations in the soil. Something gleamed faintly in the moonlight just beneath the surface. I brushed away the top layer of dirt, and my heart stopped. A gold chain, thin and delicate, had pushed its way upward through the soil, coiling slightly like it was alive. Alina gasped softly. I stared, frozen. "No," I whispered. "Not again." The chain pulsed once, reflecting the moonlight like a heartbeat. When Marcus looks down, the soil shifts, and a gold chain rises to the surface. The chain gleamed in the moonlight, as if the earth itself was giving it back. For a long, paralyzed moment, I couldn't move. Alina knelt beside me, her eyes wide, the faint reflection of the gold flickering in her pupils. The air around us felt charged, thick, electric. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, the sound blending with the low hum that seemed to rise from the ground itself. "Dad," Alina whispered, her voice trembling. "It's her again, isn't it?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I don't know," I said, though the lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Of course I knew. There was no mistaking that warmth, that presence, the quiet insistence of Miriam's love refusing to fade. The chain shifted slightly, curling upward like a snake in the grass. I reached for it instinctively, but Alina grabbed my wrist. "Don't," she said sharply. "Please. Every time we touch it, something happens." She was right. Every contact, every act of curiosity, had fed the connection between worlds. But seeing that delicate piece of gold lying there, Miriam's chain, the one she wore the night we met it, was unbearable to ignore. It was her. "I can't just leave it here," I murmured. "Then what?" Alina asked, her voice breaking. "We bury it again, and again, until the earth gets tired of giving her back?" Her words struck deeper than she knew. I looked at the disturbed soil and thought of all the times I had tried to control this, to lock her away, to silence her memory, to dictate how love should rest. Maybe that was my sin all along. I'd never truly let her go. The wind stirred, soft and warm, brushing across our faces. It carried the faint scent of lilies, as gentle as Miriam's perfume used to be. Alina's expression softened. "She's not angry," she said quietly. "She just doesn't want to be forgotten." I stared at her, realizing how much she'd grown. Grief had aged her in ways I couldn't see until now. "Neither do I," I admitted. We sat there in silence for a long time, the moon hanging above us like a pale witness. Then, slowly, I reached out, not to take the chain, but to press my hand against the soil beside it. Alina followed, her smaller hand resting next to mine. The ground was cool, steady, almost alive. I whispered, "Miriam, you've been with us long enough. You don't have to hold on anymore." The air around us trembled faintly. a soft vibration humming through the dirt beneath our palms. For a heartbeat, it felt like someone was holding our hands from beneath the ground, someone familiar, loving, and finally at peace. Alina closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Goodbye, Mom," she whispered. A sudden breeze swept through the garden, gentle but strong enough to make the grass ripple like water. The gold chain quivered, then slowly sank back into the earth, as if guided by invisible hands. The soil smoothed itself out, leaving no trace of disturbance. The humming faded. We both sat there, stunned, listening to the quiet. After a moment, I spoke. "She's gone." Alina wiped her face. "This time for good?" I nodded slowly. "For good." But even as I said it, I didn't feel sorrow. What I felt was something different, something like release. We stayed in the garden until dawn. The horizon turned soft shades of pink and gold, and for the first time in years, the sunrise didn't feel heavy. The shadows that used to creep at the edge of my vision were gone. The silence that used to terrify me now felt sacred. When we finally stood, Alina slipped her arm through mine. "What now?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "We live." She leaned her head against my shoulder as we walked back toward the house. The grass was damp beneath our feet, but the air was warm, comforting. When we reached the porch, I turned back one last time. The patch of soil where the chain had vanished looked untouched, peaceful. A part of me still expected something, one last sign, one final whisper, but none came. Only the soft call of morning birds. The sound of life continuing. Inside, Alina went upstairs to rest. I poured myself a cup of coffee and stood by the window, watching the first light fill the yard. Everything looked different now, not haunted but whole. I thought about Miriam. About the years we'd shared, the love we'd built, and the pain of losing it. She had never really been trying to hurt us. She'd just been waiting to be remembered, to be understood. And maybe, in our own broken way, we'd finally given her that. Later that day, Alina brought her sketchbook to me. "I finished it," she said softly. I flipped it open. It was a painting of Miriam, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as a woman standing in the morning light, her face peaceful, her eyes turned toward the sun. "It's beautiful," I said, my throat tightening. "She's happy," Alina said simply. I nodded, smiling through tears. "So are we." That night, before bed, I stepped outside one last time. The garden. Staring at the spot where everything had ended and begun. "Thank you," I whispered. A warm breeze brushed against my face, carrying the faintest scent of lilies. It was so soft I almost thought I imagined it. Almost. As dawn broke, I saw her just for a second in the light. Miriam, standing at the edge of the yard, her hair moving gently in the wind. She smiled, radiant and unburdened. Then she turned, her form dissolving into the sunrise. I smiled back. Some promises, I realized, don't bind us forever. They teach us how to let go. And for the first time, the word goodbye didn't feel like an ending. It felt like peace. When he looks up, he swears he sees Miriam smiling in the sunrise.